All right, so welcome to another deep dive. As always, we're diving straight in. We're not messing around.
Yeah, we're going to extract some real knowledge nuggets for you today. Some real gems.
Exactly. And this time it's something, it's a bit of a behemoth. It's ambitious, it's bold. It's My Big TOE by Thomas Campbell.
Ah, yes. The complete trilogy, no less.
The complete trilogy.
This thing is, it's a pretty big undertaking, published in 2005, and it aims to unify philosophy, physics, and metaphysics.
Okay, so before anyone panics and switches off thinking we're going to try and tackle all that today, we're not.
No. One step at a time.
Yeah, baby steps. We're easing into this thing gently, starting with excerpts from Book 1, Awakening.
And even within that, we're focusing on the initial sections where Campbell sets the stage. He shares his early experiences, observations, those kind of things.
Yeah, the stuff that kind of lays the groundwork for this big TOE.
Exactly. It's really the origin story of his ideas.
The origin story. I like that. And I mean, even the chapter titles in this first book are kind of intriguing. You've got Delusion or Knowledge. Is this guy nuts or what?
Catchy, right?
Very catchy. The Sacrificial Banana.
Now you're making me hungry.
Watch that first step. It's a big one.
Wise words.
Is this guy Monroe nuts or what? Okay, so now we've got two potentially nuts guys.
We're in good company then.
And finally, Face to Face with the Wizard of Whistlefield.
Sounds like we're in for a wild ride.
A wild ride indeed. So, in essence, Book 1 really centers on Campbell's personal journey.
It's about the unusual encounters, the circumstances, the training, and the initial research that ultimately led him to develop his theory of everything, his toe.
Right. And I think it's important to highlight that, according to Campbell, the ultimate aim of all this is to help you understand reality. Like what it is, how it works, your place in it, the big questions.
And more importantly, how you can interact with it more effectively.
Yeah, that's the crucial part, right? It's not just about understanding it, it's about doing something with that understanding.
Exactly. So where does this journey begin for Campbell? It actually starts at a pretty relatable place with transcendental meditation.
TM.
TM, okay.
Yeah.
So not exactly what you'd expect from a guy who's going to go on to develop a theory of everything.
Well, Campbell actually mentions that initially he was pretty skeptical.
That makes sense.
Yeah, he wasn't aligned with any particular belief system or anything, but he found the claims about TM intriguing, like improved concentration, reduced stress, those kind of things.
The kinds of things everyone wants.
Exactly. Plus, it was relatively cheap, $20 for 4-hour-long sessions over a week.
Okay, $20, that's pretty accessible, like a couple of coffees these days.
But it wasn't exactly a straightforward, run-of-the-mill experience.
Oh.
Yeah, there's this rather curious anecdote involving a banana.
Okay, now you have my attention. A banana. A banana. As part of the initiation process, Campbell had to bring a fresh piece of fruit to the TM Center, along with a clean handkerchief. In his case, it was a banana.
Okay.
And this fruit was part of a short ceremony. It was held up, and he could eat it afterward.
So they weren't sacrificing the banana in some kind of ritualistic offering. He got to eat it.
Yeah. And he was also given a secret mantra, a sound to repeat silently during meditation.
Right, the classic TM thing.
Yeah. But what's interesting is Campbell's internal conflict. He's naturally skeptical, right? This whole thing seems kind of strange, but he's already invested his $20. So he's kind of committed to seeing it through.
The sunk cost fallacy in action.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he's got his mantra. He's gone through the banana ritual.
It's a sacrificial banana.
What happens during that first meditation session? Well, as the initial experience was, let's just say, not exactly profound.
Not an instant enlightenment experience.
Not quite. He describes the sensation of emptiness, with his mind racing from one thought to the next.
The classic monkey mind.
Yeah. And he was expecting to be focused on his mantra, like constantly repeating that secret sound in his mind. So you can imagine his surprise when, after what felt like a very short time, the instructor says, okay, that's it. Session's over.
That's it?
Yeah. And Campbell's thinking, uh-oh, I am not doing this right. I'm supposed to be thinking about the mantra.
The expectations versus reality gap, it happens.
It does. But from that, kind of underwhelming start with meditation, Campbell's curiosity leads him down a much more unexpected path. And it's triggered by his encounter with Robert Monroe's work, the guy who wrote about out-of-body experiences.
Okay, so we're moving from meditation to astral projection. How does that happen?
Well, it all starts with a book, Monroe's Journeys Out of the Body. And it wasn't some, spiritual guru who introduced Campbell to this. It was his boss.
His boss.
Yeah, his boss was fascinated by the subject. And Campbell mentions that his own His own inclination was towards a more independent understanding of reality, something accessible through the mind itself, not through, theories or belief systems.
So he's open-minded, but not easily swayed by dogma.
Exactly. So his boss gives him this book about consciously leaving your physical body. What does Campbell do? He ends up visiting Monroe's facility in Whistlefield.
Whistlefield. Okay, so what's it like? Is it like some kind of New Age retreat?
Campbell describes this initial visit with a mix of curiosity and a sense of peculiarity. There's this diverse group of people there. The atmosphere is just unusual.
Unusual in what way?
Well, for one thing, there are large dogs just roaming freely around the property.
Okay, that's not something you see every day at a consciousness research facility.
Right, so they're at Whistlefield, and the first experiment Campbell describes is, well, on the surface, it seems quite simple. He and a bunch of others lie down on the back deck of the lab, and they're attempting to achieve an out-of-body state through relaxation and suggestion.
So they're just lying there trying to will themselves out of their bodies.
Yeah, basically. But here's where it gets a bit strange. Another participant, a young guy named Dennis, has this intense reaction. And then he describes encountering an electrical engineer who he claims will be working with them.
An electrical engineer, like a disembodied electrical engineer.
That's the implication.
Yeah.
This was totally unexpected and unexplained, and it definitely piqued Campbell's interest.
I can imagine. So this Dennis guy, he seems like he plays a pretty significant role in Campbell's journey.
It does. Their connection develops in a kind of unexpected way. Campbell mentions that Dennis just called him out of the blue sometime after their meeting at Whistlefield, and that's how their collaboration began.
Okay, so they're buddies now, exploring consciousness together. What kind of experiments do they start doing?
Well, their early experiments focused on trying to objectively measure Bob and Rose out-of-body experiences.
They're trying to bring some scientific rigor to this.
Yeah. They use an EEG to measure brain activity, and a GSR, which tracks changes in skin conductivity, both ways to try and get objective data on what's happening physiologically during these states.
Okay, smart. So what do they find?
The key finding is that whenever Monroe reports being in an out-of-body state, there's this consistent 4 Hz oscillation in both his EEG and GSR readings.
A 4 hertz oscillation. That's interesting. So there's a measurable biological correlate to these subjective experiences.
It seems that way. And this is where binaural beats come in.
Okay, binaural beats. I've heard of those. They're supposed to, like, sync your brain waves or something.
Yeah, that's the idea. Dennis had come across research showing that if you present slightly different tones to each ear, let's say 100 hertz in one and 104 hertz in the other, it creates this perceived beat frequency of 4 hertz in the brain.
So you're essentially tricking the brain into producing this specific frequency.
Exactly. And they realized that they might have a technique to induce altered states of consciousness in others.
Just using sound.
And they started experimenting with binaural beats and saw some dramatic effects on people's brainwave patterns.
I bet that got a lot of attention.
Oh, yeah. Requests to participate in their experiments skyrocketed.
So now they're not just observing Monroe, they're actively trying to induce these states in others. And this leads them to what Campbell calls non-physical matter reality, or NPMR.
And this is where things get really, really strange. They start doing experiments where Campbell and Dennis are in separate soundproof chambers, totally isolated. But they start having these incredibly similar subjective experiences.
Even though they can't communicate with each other.
Right. And it's not just like vague feelings. There are correlations in the details of what they perceive. For example, they do this thing where they each write down what they think are random numbers. And when they compare them, there's a high degree of correlation.
No way.
Yeah. In another experiment, they each focus their attention on a different location, like a geographical location. And they're able to perceive things about those locations, things that the other person is focusing on.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
Right. It suggests that there's this non-physical realm where information, or maybe even perception, can be shared in ways that we don't understand.
So things are getting pretty wild. And then there's this point where Campbell talks about this idea of this kid is weird enough.
That phrase marks a real turning point.
What does it mean?
It suggests some kind of recognition from what Campbell perceives as non-physical instructors or guides, like they're acknowledging his abilities.
They're saying he's ready for the next level.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
He starts receiving instructions, feeling guided through this learning process in the non-physical.
So it's not just random exploration anymore. There's a sense of direction.
Right. And Campbell describes actually interacting with these non-physical entities.
Like having conversations.
Yeah. And they offer guidance on his life, his future. He even mentions predictions being made, like details about a future relationship, including the age difference with his partner.
Predictions from non-physical beings. It's getting pretty out there.
It is. And these experiences lead to Campbell dedicating himself to exploring NPMR. He sees it as this incredible opportunity to learn about the nature of reality.
So he's all in on this non-physical reality thing. And this brings us to section 2 of the book, Mysticism Demystified, the Foundations of Reality.
And that title is really important. Campbell argues that what we consider mystical now might be scientifically understood in the future. Like, think about weather patterns. Used to be attributed to the gods, now it's meteorology.
Right.
So he's trying to bridge the gap between the seemingly inexplicable and a scientific understanding.
Makes sense. But how do you even start to build a theory of everything?
It's a huge challenge, and Campbell acknowledges that.
Yeah.
He points out that even fundamental things like space, time, and consciousness, we don't directly perceive them. Our brains construct a model of reality based on our senses.
So our experience of reality is filtered through our brain.
Exactly. And that's a key part of his big TOEI.
Okay, so we've gone from a $20 meditation course with a banana to out-of-body experiences with electrical engineers and non-physical instructors to questioning the very nature of reality.
Quite the journey.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? What do we actually know about consciousness, about reality? What's real, what's not?
Big questions.
And it makes you wonder, what might we consider mystical today that could be explained scientifically in the future? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.